Good evening. Glory and honor and power and blessing to Father Yahweh and to his Son Messiah, Yahweh Shah, who had set forth as the offering for sin of his people, as well as the intercessor and the prophet from the Father Yahweh. Glory and honor to his name, Yahweh Shah, and to the Father Yahweh. Greetings and blessings to the scattered nation of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, into the four corners of the earth through slavery, as foretold in the Bible, and to the 144,000 who are being prepared as the forerunners to the return of Messiah and the establishment of Messiah's kingdom. Greetings to the Gentiles who also have received the perfect righteousness of the Father through the line of the tribe of Judah, Messiah Hawashai. Greetings. Greetings to the chat, Brother Ricky Boyd, Brother Gary Joseph, Brother David Harriet, Brother Stephen Kelly, Sister Daniels, Justin Moore, Brother Chaplain Lewis. Greetings to all of you. I hope you're all safe. Brother Superstar, Shalom. Hope you're all safe and healthy today, and your families are also safe and healthy. Today, the other day, this has been bothering me for a while. I want to say several years. And the other day, it kind of snapped. And I believe it was from the Most High. Let me share what I'm talking about. I've been seeing a lot of videos over the last few years. For example, brothers and sisters leaving the United States. Some of them leaving other areas like the UK, but mostly it's the United States. And there have been videos that go like this. What do people in Brazil feel about Black people from America? What do people in Africa, name your country in Africa, think about Black Americans? What do people in the Philippines? What do people in Mexico? What do people in Portugal? What do people in Spain, Italy? Name your country. Think about us. Because we're concerned with what people think about us. And it's bothered me because it speaks to something deeper. And it reminds me of, okay, so we know the history, right? We know the history. Let's just look at it very briefly in the Bible. It's all in the Bible, and most of us have read it. But just for those that may not know, let's just look at just some verses, some witnesses to show why we arrive at this situation. And again, let's look at, for example, Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28. And I'm going to read selected verses because we know there's a lot of them. And we're going to skip around and look at some other, just to get an overall picture. There are, again, 40 witnesses in the Bible, and we just need 2 or 3 to establish what we're talking about here. So let's go through Deuteronomy chapter 28, how the Most High talked to our fathers and warned them. Going to start at verse 15. I'm going to read from verse 15 to verse 21. Then I'm going to just go through selected verses. Deuteronomy 28, beginning at verse 15 and going down to verse 21. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Most High, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all of these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, and the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. Yahweh shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, in all that thou settest thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. Verse 30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard and shall not gather the grapes thereof. Verse 31 and 32. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and thou shalt not be restored unto thee. Thy sheep shall be given into thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Verse 37 and 38. Thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither Yahweh shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shall gather in but little, for the locust shall consume it. Verse 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Verse 48, 49, and 50. Therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which Yahweh shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Verse 64. Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. There thou shalt serve other gods, neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Verse 65 through 68. Among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But Yahweh shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even. And at even thou shalt say, would God it were morning. For the fear of thy heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thy eyes which thou shalt see. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, all these things we know have come to pass, but let's look at a couple of other witnesses. Ezekiel, so we can see we'd be sold into slavery. We can see we'd become a proverb and a byword. We'll be worshiping other gods of the nations that tortured us, scattered us, took us. Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel chapter 4. I'm going to begin at verse 9 and go down to verse 13. Ezekiel chapter 4, witness number 2, from verse 9 to verse 13. Take thou also unto thee wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and fitches, and put them in one vessel, and make thee bread thereof, according to the number of the days thou shalt lie upon thy side. 390 days shalt thou eat thereof. And thy meat which thou shalt eat shall be by weight, 20 shekels a day. From time to time shalt thou eat it. And thou shalt drink also water by measure, the sixth part of a hin. From time to time shalt thou drink it. And thou shalt eat it as barley cakes, and thou shalt bake it with dung that cometh out of a man in their sight. And Yahweh said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them. So we not only be scattered, we not only be enslaved, we not only be used, abused, but we'll eat unclean and defiled food in the land of our enemies. One more witness. Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. I'm going to begin at verse 1 from Joel chapter 3. down to verse 6. Joel chapter 3, from 1 to 6. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? If ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, I will return your recompense upon your own head, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold into the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. So we can see one more from the Messiah himself. Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, beginning at verse 20 and going down to verse 24. Luke chapter 21 from verse 20 to verse 24. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. And then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we have seen our condition and the reasons for our condition in just these four witnesses. Now, there are many more, but just in these four witnesses, we have seen our condition as a people and the results. So what happened now, let's just use the United States as an example, because the Bible tells us we have been scattered into all nations. But the United States seems to be the hot flash point for a lot of this atrocity. And in the United States of America, they started bringing us here by capturing us and, of course, kidnapping us, mostly from the shores of West Africa, from that continent. They were bringing us here and among other places as well. But again, we're using the United States, but it's scattered throughout all now the Caribbean islands, South America, all over. But just use the United States. They brought us here as captives, whereby any other people that came to the United States from Europe came here to seek a better life, came here for the American dream. Everybody, that is, except us. We were not coming here for the American dream. We were kidnapped and forced to build the American dream. Okay? And so that being the case, we have been here for 400 years and we've forgotten who we are. Our names were changed. Our language was changed. Our religion was changed. So that after several generations, in spite of things like roots and Kunta Kinte, we forgot who we really are. We forgot what our real names are. We don't even know the names that the slave masters gave us. We forgot our language. Only we knew about was white Jesus. That's all we knew about. Okay. And so we were in that cycle for centuries. Okay. Then when you're like that, when that's your mental state, when that's your history that you know, that you're aware of, it's like you're an orphan. It's like you're a person with no parentage. You have no history. The only history you knew of yourself was in chains. And what you were told was that you were a wild person, descendants of wild people that were savages in Africa. And that these Caucasian people that kidnapped you, whipped you, raped you, and forced labored you, these are the civilized people. And we began to believe that. And so when the Civil War began and Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, You had tens of thousands of black men volunteering to go to war for several reasons. The two prominent ones were, number one, they were promised their freedom. Number two, they were trying to prove to these Caucasian people that enslaved them that they were more than animals and chattel slaves, that they were worth more than cows and sheep, that they were really human beings with souls. Because you see, there were religions like the Mormon religion that would teach their people that black people didn't have souls. That's how those religions started, and that we were savages. So we were trying to prove that we weren't. And it's really silly, isn't it? They made us how we were. They changed our name. They took us from our own civilizations. They changed our religion. And then they labeled us savages. And over the course of centuries, we began to believe it. Then after the Civil War ended, began the Reconstruction. And many of the former slaves were prominent in the Reconstruction. What was the Reconstruction? Well, the South was completely destroyed. Most of its major cities like Atlanta, places in North Carolina, South Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, New Orleans, completely annihilated and destroyed by the Union armies. So prominent builders, prominent politicians at that time were former slaves. Once everything was rebuilt and they had a new politician that didn't know Joseph come into the presidency, they began to institute Andrew Johnson. They began to institute Jim Crow and take away any rights that we thought we might have had. Began to put out propaganda again about us being rapists of their white women and slaves and animals, savages, with the support of the federal government. And we began to believe that. Then came World War I. And we volunteered, black men volunteered in droves to fight for a country that hated them in order to prove that they were men, that they were human beings, that they had value. And after World War I ended, came Red Summer, 1919, where black men were coming back from fighting over Europe and were lynched and murdered in their uniforms. Then came World War II. Same scenario. Black men volunteered to fight against Hitler, against Mussolini, against Hirohito, for the country that hated them, to prove that they were human beings, that they were smart, that they weren't lazy after working for free for more than 300 years, that they had worth, that they were human beings, that they weren't animals. And they're trying to convince the very people that put the propaganda out in the first place. I know that sounds silly, but that's how our minds were taken. So we began this cycle that continues all the way to today, where we're always trying to prove by moving into a neighborhood with them, by working really hard, we're trying, and then by explaining to them where we're coming from, to people whose fathers set up where we're coming from. Isn't that silly? But that's how we think. See? That's how they think. So we're still trying to prove to a people that don't care why we have ghettos, what it's like in the ghetto. Why are you trying to explain to the people who set up the ghettos and put you in there what it's like? Do you really think they care? And they're always curious. What is it like to live in a place like that? I can't imagine. And it's their fathers that put you there. Okay. So when you continually have this orphan mentality, and that's what it is, you have no place that you belong. You don't know your name. because it ain't Smith or Jones. You don't know your history. You don't know nothing about yourself except what you've been told by the people that enslaved you. So you're an orphan, and you'll take any culture, and you want to be accepted by any culture. So what are we seeing today? Well, over the last 2 decades at least, you're starting to see people that are the descendants of slaves leave the United States. And it's becoming, as the years go by, it's becoming more and more prevalent for various reasons. But one of the main reasons are we're looking to be accepted. We're looking to be able to live in peace somewhere without having to worry about somebody hating us because our skin is brown, or thinking we're a savage, or that they can't walk down the street at night if we're walking down the street at night because we might hurt them. Then comes the awakening, and that changes everything. Let's look at it in the word. Let's go back to Deuteronomy, because it not only talked about the curse, but it talked about the awakening as well. Deuteronomy chapter 30. Deuteronomy chapter 30. And I like to read these words very slowly and carefully, because there's a lot of implications here that you'll miss if you just rush through. Okay, so you know the background now. You know how we got into slavery. You know what the prophecies are about us being in chains, about us being second-class citizens, about us being naked and in want of all things, and proverbs and bywords about us eating defiled bread like chitlins and pork, and not understanding anymore or even remember anymore why we wouldn't be eating that stuff. You know that now, because we went through that. So let's look at the awakening side. Deuteronomy chapter 30, beginning at verse 1 and 2. Let's look at that very carefully. Deuteronomy 30, verse 1 and 2. And it shall come to pass. It shall come to pass. Now, what does that imply? When you read, it shall come to pass, doesn't that mean future? Like, it means future. Not only does it mean future, it's prophetic future, right? It shall come to pass. When you see a prophet, and here's with Moses, a prophet, a Levite prophet, he's writing to the children of Israel. So when it says it shall come to pass, Moses is saying this is going to happen in the future. What's going to happen in the future? Let's read. When all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee. So when all the things that we just read about happen to us in the future, something's going to happen after that. What? And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither Yahweh thy Most High have driven thee. So in the nations that we are not original citizens of, nations that captured us and brought us as slaves to build their dreams, will come to mind the blessings and the curse that we've been under. The blessings that happened before the curse. Because in Deuteronomy 28 talks about blessings upon the Israelites prior to the curse. So it will come to our mind how we were blessed, and finally, how we were cursed. Let me ask some of you who have been awakening to the truth of who you are, was it not the curses? When you started reading the curses, did you not think in your mind, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Wait a minute, that sounds like my family. That sounds like what happened to us. That's how I awakened. I said, wait, these curses, wait a minute. That sounds like my family. I mean, my blood family that I know, that sounds like them from slavery in South and Florida down here. I was like, wait, that sounds like my grandfather becoming part of the family that escaped and ran into the mountains in Jamaica. I said, that sounds like us. The blessing and the curse, the last being the curse. And you're calling them to mind. So now what happens when you're ignorant, and then all of a sudden things start coming to your mind? I think we can call that awakening. Thou shalt call them to mind. It says, among the nations whither Yahweh that has driven thee. So you're starting to awaken and you're remembering, you're seeing the curse. You ain't got to remember the curse. You see the curse. Okay, you see the curse. And for most of us, it's generational. Generational curses. Like you could go back to when you was little and there was elders around you of your aunts and uncles and cousins, and it goes back before them, and you know about that. The blessings and the curse. So you're now awakening. All right. Verse 2. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 2. And shalt return unto Yahweh thy most high, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thy heart and with all thy soul. So now part of this awakening is returning to your God. Not white Jesus, not Allah from Muhammad. No, not the Pope. You're returning to your God before your name was changed to Smith, before your name became Jefferson or Washington or Jones. You're going back before that. You see, and it goes through different stages if you notice. Some people go back to Africa because that's the last thing they know. And they're trying to call. You heard people say, I'm calling on my ancestors. See, but even though their ancestors are dead, but they are still, that's their way of saying, I need to get away and awaken from what's happened to me. I need to stop being an orphan. I need to be from someplace. I need to know I'm a part of somebody. Because again, if you're raised in the United States as a Black person, a so-called African American, and that's another thing, we've been changing our names, trying to find our identity, right? We were called Negroes, and that actually comes from Niger, and then the Caucasian scientists that called us Negroids. So we were Negroes, and we went from Negroes to colored. They still use colored, in South Africa. Then we went from colored and Negroes to Black. Because, and let me just give you a little bit of history about Black. I like Black, and I'll tell you why. It's almost like, I'm gonna use a silly example. I have a cousin, love my cousin. My father always called him an outlaw because he was always in trouble with the law. Well, when we was little, and this was before anybody started doing it, we wear baseball hats. But my cousin decided to put his backwards, and he put a little dent in the front, and he cocked it a little bit. And all of us walk with a little tip, but my cousin walked with the tip with his hat like that. And what were we saying? What were we doing? We were rebelling against the system. That's what we were doing subconsciously. We were rebelling against the system. Okay, and we were rebelling in different ways. And so Black became, because they made everything white good and Black bad. So we said, okay, we are Black and we're proud to be Black. That's where Black came. Okay, then it became Afro because we started allowing our hair to grow instead of cutting it to look like what our slave masters wanted us to look like. They started letting their hair grow into what we know as the Afro, and then they became Afro-Americans. They still call, if you got Hebrews in certain areas, they'll say Afro-Ecuadorians, Afro-Mexicans. They still use that term. Okay. And then since we were starting to figure out we came from Africa, it became African Americans. Because we want to still be accepted by America. So we say African Americans. So you had Japanese Americans because they're from Japan. You had Chinese Americans because they're from China, right? So on and so forth. Mexican Americans. So we became African Americans to try to fit in. We're continually trying to find our identity, continually trying to find our identity. trying to stop being orphans, trying to prove to people that we're not animals, that we're really human beings, that we're not trying to hurt you. You don't have to shoot us when our hands are up, because we're not here to hurt you. And we're telling people that don't care. Think about that. They don't care. They don't care if you think they don't care what you explain to them about not being an animal. They don't care. Listen, I'm going to say some things that might bother some people, so I'm going to warn you. There has never been, in the history of the United States of America, a harder working people than the Black people of America. Ever. Ever. Chinese people came here and they were working the railroads, but they were working alongside us. They were working for pay. We were working in chains. Okay? There is no other people that has a history in the United States of America that has worked for more than 3 centuries for free. Let me say that again. There is no people ever that ever stepped on the shores of this land that has worked for more than 3 centuries for free. Nobody. So there's no harder, just by that evidence, there's no harder working people in this country ever, except the Black people. Nobody. People will say, well, my ancestors came from Italy and they came here with penniless. That's right. We came from Poland and they came penniless. We came from England and we came penniless and we made our own. We worked hard. That's right. The system that you worked hard in, the system that you came here on, the boat you probably took to get here was built on our backs for free. The railroad you went out west in, those tracks were built by us for free. The opportunities you had when you came here were opportunities we never have had, and we will never have, because they weren't made for us. They were made for you. They were made for you to come from Europe and have the opportunity. The American dream was made for y'all. It was not made for the ones that were kidnapped and brought here. It was not made for us. See, that's what people don't understand. See, listen, brethren, let me just say as a side note, before we continue in Deuteronomy 30, let me just say as a side note, don't ever use an entertainer as your example. You know what it takes to be a rich entertainer? You ready? 3 things. It takes hard work. It takes talent. And you got to have your lips firmly on the buttocks of Satan. Did you hear what I said? You want to make it big in entertainment? It takes 3 things. It takes hard work. It takes talent. And you got to have your lips firmly on the 2 cheeks of the buttocks of Satan. And then you can make it. And every entertainer that makes money is in that boat. All of them. And if you think there's an exception, you've been bamboozled. This world is run by spirits. The Bible tells us you don't fight against flesh and blood. You fight against principalities, what we would call a system, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what runs this world. That's what runs it. So if you make it big, it ain't because you're just honest, hard-working Joe or Jane. It don't work like that. Not when there's spiritual wickedness in high places running things. Deuteronomy chapter 30. So you return to your God. That's the awakening. You're no longer an orphan at that point, because at that point, you start to know who you are and where you came from. And for people that never had to deal with that, you can't, there's no way you can understand. There's no way. If you could look back and say, well, my great-grandfather Giuseppe came from Italy. Well, okay, you know who you are and where you come from. Or my great-granddad Schmidt came from Berlin. Okay, you know who you are and where you came from. We don't have that. And you don't know what it's like to not have that. You can't even imagine it. It's, again, like being an orphan. Being an orphan in a strange land and being hated because of what you look like, and you had nothing to do with what you look like or how you was born. You had nothing to do with what you look like, how you was born, who your parents was, or where you was born. But you're hated. And you don't know why. All you know is they had you in chains. That's all you know. Until now. Until now. When you start reading this book, it all makes sense. And that's one of the joys of even finding out about the curse. You find joy in the curses because you got an answer. You got an answer as to who you are and why you are. Okay. Verse 3. Then Yahweh thy most high will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations where the Yahweh thy most high have scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out to the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahweh thy most high gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. Yes. So he's promising to gather us again together. And that goes again with Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11. Again, three witnesses. Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11, beginning at verse 10. Isaiah 11, beginning at verse 10, and going down to verse 12. Witness 2. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Witness 2. He's going to awaken us. He's going to gather us. As we return back to our God, he promises to deliver us. Okay? Third witness. Zephaniah. How about Zephaniah? Zephaniah chapter 3. Zephaniah chapter 3. Okay, Zephaniah chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 8. I'm going to start at verse 8. And I'm going to go down to I'm going to start at verse 8 and I'm going to go down to verse 20. Yes, from verse 8 to verse 20, because it's powerful enough. Therefore, wait ye upon me, saith Yahweh, until the day that I arise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations and assemble the kingdoms and to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. For then will I turn to the people of pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh and serve him with one consent. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, we call that today the diaspora. The daughters of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. In that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings wherein thou hast transgressed against me. For then I will take away out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in thy pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people, and they shall trust in the name of Yahweh. The remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity, nor speak lies. Neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Sing, O daughter of Zion, shout, O Israel, be glad and rejoice with all the heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Yahweh hath taken away thy judgments. He hath cast out thine enemy. The King of Israel, even Yahweh, is in the midst of thee. Thou shalt not see evil any more. In that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear thou not. And to Zion, let not thine hands be slack. Yahweh thy most high in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halted, and gather her that was driven out. And I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. And at that time I will bring you again, even in the time that I gather you. I will make you a name and a praise among all the people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith Yahweh. There's 3 witnesses, and I could give you more, but I think you got the point. So now that we're awakening, the key thing for me is I'm not an orphan anymore. I have a father. Even more so, not only do I have a heavenly father that chose my fathers to be his chosen people, I understand now why we were in chains. I understand why we got hung from trees, because our fathers hung our cousin to the Gentiles who hung him on the tree. So we have been hung on trees. I understand now. I understand now why we invent all kind of wonderful things and never get credit for it. I understand now why we can't, if we don't sell out to Satan, make it in this system big, because it's not built for us. It's not our father's kingdom. This is Satan's kingdom. I understand now that my name was probably something like Zephaniah or Lawai or Yahweh. That my name might have been Jeremiah Yahu or Yaakov. I understand that I come from the 12 tribes. I understand that we have been scattered, and I can see now. Now I know who my fathers are. I know who my cousin is. I belong. And I have no need to prove to anybody how hard I work. I have no need to prove to anybody that I'm a human being. I have no need to prove to anybody whether they should like me or not. You see, years ago, brethren, not that many either, I messed up. Yeah, I messed up because what you guys and me and many of you can understand is anger. Right? You brothers and you sisters that were orphans, you were, some still are, angry. And you know, the Bible says, and let's take a look at Moses for a minute, because many of us can relate to this. Let's look at Moses in Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7. How Stephen, on the day he was martyred, he explained Moses. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse 20 of Acts chapter 7. Verse 20 in Acts chapter 7. I'm going to read from verse 20 down to verse 25 of Acts chapter 7. Watch this now. In which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And he was cast out. Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son. By the way, when it says he was cast out, they were taking male babies and throwing them to alligators, which also happened here in Florida, just to let you know. But Pharaoh's daughter, because it was ordained of the father, drew him out of the water, which is why his name was Masha, which is to draw out. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed and smote the Egyptian. Watch this now. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that Yah by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. What does that got to do with what I'm talking about? Moses realized who he was. He realized his purpose to deliver the children of Israel. But he jumped the gun and he went ahead and he went and killed an Egyptian and he thought that all his people would be with him, but they weren't. And then he had to go into the wilderness. And when he was humbled to the point where he felt he was not ready, he would never be able to do this because he killed somebody, he messed up. He felt that's what it was. I messed up. I can't. And the Most High said, okay, now you're ready. And he had to convince him. He said, no, now you're ready. You're ready. It's time. I'm bringing your brother to help you. Okay. Well, when I started awakening, one of the things that used to make me very angry, and I keep cool now as best I can by the grace of the Most High only. I hate disrespect. Brothers, you understand what I'm saying? I hate it. Like, my wife knows. You want to get me angry? Start trying to overtalk me when I'm talking to you. Start yelling back at me and arguing when I'm trying to talk to you. I don't like that. And she knows it. After 38 years, she knows she'll leave it alone. Don't try to overtalk me. And Lord help me. I especially hate it when it comes from a white man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm being honest with you. Okay, because I feel like I'm not the only one that feels like that. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not the only one that feels like that. There is an anger, and I know now it goes back centuries. See, that's why it's almost silly for people to say, well, slavery was a long time ago. I had nothing to do with it. The anger of our ancestors are in the spirit, in our spirit. I feel it. And so this was years ago now, but I've lost jobs because of that. And one of the time it was, I didn't do anything but look. And the look scared the white supervisor. And they took me off the job. I didn't say anything, but I was angry. I was angry, there's no doubt. And I'm gonna tell you this story. I already had this in me. I had started awakening already. This was more than 10 years ago. And now I'm starting to realize, and at the beginning part, one of the stages was, I wasn't going to take it no more, right? So I'm at this job, and there's this man behind me. He's an Indian man. He's from India, and he's just learning the job. He's new, and he's just learning the job. And so he's nervous. He wants the work. He wants to do a good job, but he's nervous. So in comes this man. My back is to the Indian man and to that man. And the man started berating him. What are you doing? You have no idea. You messed this all up. And I perked like this. And then I just turned around. And when I was just turning around because the noise was right behind me, like a few feet behind me, right? And I turned around, and that white man, he turned from his wrath and looked at this dude and then looked at me. And I looked at him like, and what? Like, I was almost like, don't say nothing, don't do nothing. And he caught that and he walked away. Then another white man came, and this dude's teeth was growling like, what are you doing like that? Brethren, it took all. It took all. But I obviously conveyed something because I was, what? You must be out your mind. So it was soon after that, they came and said, oh, we want to take you off the project. And they laid me off. But I knew what it was. They wouldn't say. And they all were nervous about it because they didn't have anything to say because I didn't say anything. But they caught it. Then the next job, the Most High was trying to help me. See, I jumped the gun. The next job I had, I'm in an office full of people. Okay. I mean, full of people, right? Must have been 30 people. So look, one of the owners of the company, now it's morning. And in the morning, everybody's on their phone. They're doing their work and they're on their phone texting somebody. My wife happened to text me. Whenever my wife calls or texts, I feel like something's wrong. That's my first reaction. So I'm calling, texting her. So one of the owners of the company, white male, walks by me and everybody's on their phone now. He leans over to me. Might I suggest that's inappropriate? And my immediate response was, yes, sir. And he walked away, but it was only a few seconds later. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up and I was getting angrier by the second. I'm going to tell you what happened. There was another brother in me. And he said, Todd, I got to go outside. I need you to come with me. Because he saw what was about to happen. Because I was boiling and the temperature was rising. And he grabbed me and we went outside and he said, I'm trying to save you from losing your job. Because I was about to lose it right there. I stayed cool. I prayed and stayed cool. Do you know that same white man gave me a bonus and a raise in the next 12 months? Gave me a bonus and a raise. I wasn't expecting either. And from what the accountant told me later, she said, we gotta hook up, we gotta hook up this Todd. He said, you gotta look him up because he's working really hard, doing a great job. And I was so shocked. But the Most High was trying to teach me, stay cool. He teach me meekness. Stay cool. But then I got charged a third time. So I got on another job. They were paying me more money, so I left that one, went to another one. And on this job, we in a meeting, and this little pumpkin head, this little Indian dude, we talking in the meeting, and he starts raising his voice at me and starts yelling. So I stayed cool. Praise the Most High. But I called my supervisor and I explained to him what happened. I said, I think we could work together, but I don't think that's appropriate. He said he yelled, and then they asked a couple of people that was in the meeting. They all said, yeah, he started yelling. And so he said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a meeting with you. And that man that yelled was my supervisor. So I went to the guy above both of us. And so he called us three together. This is what my supervisor said. He said, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I yell at people all the time. You'll get used to it. See, that's where it messed up right there. So then I said, sir, I said like that. I was calm. I said, sir, the next time you raise your voice at me, we're going to have a problem. In fact, I did sopranos on myself. We're going to have a problem, my friend. So then the big boss said, he told that man, Todd is right. We don't do that in a professional environment. And he said, but I do it to everybody. And I said, I'm not everybody. I don't care who else you do it to, but you do not raise your voice to me. I didn't lose the job, but they took me out the project. And my new supervisor said, that man spoke all kind of negative about you, but we still like you. And and they did. They moved me to a new position away from that guy. Okay. But it's been a journey of meekness and staying cool. You see, brethren, again, we no longer part of our awakening. And again, that's stages I had to go through to get to the point where I'm at now, where I understand we no longer have to prove ourselves to anybody. And we no longer have to worry about what they think about us. We have to have our own dignity and respect as who we are, as the chosen people. But we got to be cool. You see, because unlike false religions where they'll say Messiah is in Brooklyn or the Messiah is in Florida. I've heard all of that. Or the Messiah is in Israel. When our Messiah returns, the Bible tells us it's going to be loud. When he returns, everybody's going to see. For example, again, when you're looking at Revelation 19, and it says in Revelation 19, and the heavens were open, and behold, a white horse, and him sat faithful and true, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. And you see the sky filled with millions of beings. There's no secret about that. Everybody's going to know something happened, right? So until that time, and it's coming quick. It's coming very quick. Just like I said, we ain't got 10 years left. It's coming quick. And he, in his mercy, he's now showing us so that we can hang on. You remember what the word said? The Messiah said, unless those days should be shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. So he's given out of his mercy. He's showing us. He's showing us when he's going to come. So we know we can hang on. So we got to stay cool. But we now know we're not orphans anymore. We know who we are. We know who our father is. We know who our cousin is. We were literally relations to the Messiah. He is a line of the tribe of Judah, and we're relations to him. He's our cousin, bloodline cousin. Okay? Understanding all of this, this book takes on a new meaning. As you all are also discovered, takes on a whole new meaning. Okay, takes on a whole new meaning. When you're reading it, understanding it, okay, takes on a whole new meaning. So we no longer have to worry about what people think. We don't have to worry about proving anything. Remember, you come from the stock of people that built a nation. You come from the stock of people that built a nation. Of people that were so skilled in breeding horses, in inventions, in all types of skills of writing and reading, before many of the Europeans, unfortunately, were in caves still. They didn't know nothing about that. When they came to Egypt, they were finding stuff that we built. My wife and I are scheduling to go to Mexico this year. We're looking at some places down there. One of the things I'm going to see when I go down there by the grace of the Most High is the pyramids they built. The Mayans built pyramids. The Mayans are northern tribes. Where do you think they learned how to build pyramids like that? We built them pyramids in Egypt. Our fathers did that. We built the White House. Our fathers did that. That's who we come from. Engineers, kings, princes, princesses, nation builders. That's where we're from. That's who we are. And guess what? Guess what? According to what we just read, that's what we're going to be again. Revelation chapter 1, while we're in the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 1. Revelation chapter 1, verse 6. And hath made us kings and preach unto Yah and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Have made us what? Kings and priests. That's who we are. That's where we come from. Remember that. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you. Give you peace. So